Industrial reviews have included machinery and automotive, woodworking, machine shop, baking, sheet metal, plastics, and various other industries, to name a few. In addition, during the past 18 years, Mr. Hill has completed over 20,000 school shop machinery reviews for different school boards across Ontario. Mr. Hill is currently a member of ISO 10218-2, Robots for Industrial Environment, Safety Requirements, Part 2, Robot System and Integration, a member of the Technical Committee on Occupational Injury Risk Management, CSA Z 1002, a member of the Technical Committee for Z 434, Industrial Robots and Robot Systems, General Safety Requirements, and also a member of the Technical Committee for the Z 432, Safeguarding of Machinery. Mr. Hill has been a member of the Professional Engineers of Ontario since 1999. So without further ado, Jason, it's all yours. If just before we get started too, if everybody could please mute themselves, and we will take questions at the end of the presentation.
Hello, everybody. Okay, I'm gonna just blank my screen and put on the PowerPoint presentation. And I have to share screen and
Yeah. It's once a month, anytime.
We can see your screen.
Okay, great, perfect. Okay, so if we could just leave the questions till the end, I'm going to start just by kind of going over the pre-starts. Basically, pre-starts are part of our Occupational Health and Safety Act, Regulation 851. They're in Section 7. And I'll just read from the screen here as we go along and add in a few other notes. Section 7 of the Industrial Establishments Regulation may additionally require that a PSR be carried out before an apparatus, structure, protective element, or process is used in a factory, and preferably at the design stage to identify any areas of non-compliance. A PSR identifies hazards associated with the equipment, structure, or process that could expose a worker to injury during routine operation. The goal of a PSR is hazard elimination or control before the apparatus, protective element, structure, or process is started up or used in a factory. So there's 8 items to pre-starts, and I'll go through them one at a time here. So the first one is has to do with I'll just read it here. Either of the following applies with respect to flammable liquids. More than 235 liters of flammable liquids are located in a building or room, or 2 flammable liquids are dispensed in a building. So if you have any of those requirements or any of those applications, then you need to do a pre-start on that. So when flammable liquids are located in a building or room or dispensed in a building, room, or area, and a PSR is being written to determine compliance or measures to be taken to achieve compliance with subsections 22.1, 22.2, and 22.4 of the Industrial Establishments Regulation as applicable, the following codes, guidelines, regulations, and standards can be referenced. So when the reviewer goes to review the application, they can reference these standards, just to name a few. So the Ontario Electrical Safety Code, the Fire Code, TSSA, the National Fire Code of Canada, Factory Mutual Handbook, the Plus 2203 HAZLOC, and also these are really applicable as well, the National Fire Protection Association, so NFPA standards, NFPA 30, 68, 69, 505, and the Fire Protection Handbook. So as the reviewer, when you're looking at this area of dispensing flammable liquids, or your more than 235 liters of flammable liquids are located in a building or room, then the reviewer would look at these requirements, and you would need to do a pre-start for that if you had those situations. Number 2, which is the big one. So this has to do with machinery. So if you have any sort of proactive safeguarding device that signal the apparatus to stop, such as a light curtain, an area scanner, two-hand controls, a safety mat, or an interlock guard. They also have in here, but you don't see it so often, radio frequency systems and capacitance safeguarding systems. But mostly it's the light curtain, the area scanner, the safety mat, the two-hand control, or the interlock guard. If you have any pieces of machinery that have that on it, then you need to do a pre-start. And then number 2, they're barrier guards that use interlocking mechanical or electrical safeguarding devices. So same thing as an interlock guard. So this, I'm just going to go a little further. So that's when a pre-start is required, if you have any of those items. So a pre-start, let's say you had a machine or that had a pre-start. PSR is not required for maintenance tasks such as the replacement of one part with an identical part. So if you had a pre-start on a machine and you needed to replace, let's say the interlock on the guard broke, somebody dropped the guard and it broke the interlock, and you were going to replace the interlock like for like, you wouldn't need to redo the pre-start, hire an engineer to come in and take a look at it again. However, if you replace that part with a different part that was wired differently into the safety circuit, then you would need to have another pre-start done to look at that specific part of what changed. Another example would be if you were to replace a light curtain with a two-hand control, that would be considered a new installation as well, because that's going to be wired differently, and the two-hand control is a different sort of safeguard, so you'll have to have that sort of reviewed. So you have to have that reviewed. Because it goes back to the instances where the pre-start, what triggers a pre-start. And I'll get to a little further when you don't have to do pre-starts, like if you make a change on your machine when you don't have to do it. Another one is the integration of a protective element for the system, such as an interlock perimeter fence, would trigger a circumstance in the table and require a PSR for the entire system. If the integration triggers the circumstance only for a specific machine in the system, then the PSR would only be required for that specific machine. And I'll get to that a little further too. That's a good point. So here it is. So series of equipment together. So a lot of times you have lines where they're connected by conveyors, and then you have standalone pieces of equipment that function along that system. The way the MOL, or sorry, the regulation reads is that when a production line or process is formed by the connection of multiple pieces of equipment, a requirement for a PSR for one piece of equipment would not automatically trigger a PSR for all of the equipment. Assess each piece of equipment to determine if a PSR would be required. So you might have a line where you have the operator places the part on a conveyor, and then it goes to, let's say, a pressing device, and it gets pressed, and then it travels along another conveyor, and then it goes into sanding system. Depending on how it's configured, you may not have to do the pre-start on the conveyors. You just the pressing device and the sander, as they're usually considered one complete unit. And I'll just read a little further here. For example, if a production line with multiple machines that have interlock gates are connected to each other by conveyors, only the machines with interlock gates would require a PSR. The conveyors, however, would have to comply with sections 24 and 25 of the Industrial Establishments Regulation, as well as other sections applicable to conveyors. So you still have to guard the conveyors to try and eliminate the hazards exposed to the operator, like the in-running nip hazards and the pinch points. But you can generally do that with fixed guarding, and that wouldn't trigger a pre-start health and safety review. So then you'd be focusing on the enclosed, pressing operations that typically have interlock guards or light curtains, or the sanding applications. The following examples of devices do not require a PSR, even if they replace one of the protective elements listed in item 2 that would have triggered a PSR. So if you have emergency stop buttons and pull cords, fixed barrier guards, holdback devices, or pullback devices. So if you have those on a machine, like let's say you bought a drill press and the drill press has an emergency stop button on it, you don't need a pre-start on that, because it has none of the proactive devices. I'm just going to flip back here real quick. So it doesn't have any of the proactive devices that we talked about: the light curtain, the area scanner, the interlock guard, the safety mat, the two-hand control system. It doesn't have any of that. So in that application, you would need it, similar to a table saw, unless you purchased some of these newer table saws, well, more specifically like a saw stop, or if you bought a sliding table saw, some of them have interlock guards on the bottom side. That would trigger a pre-start. But a normal Delta King Industrial table saw, if you were to buy one of those, they wouldn't typically trigger a pre-start because they don't have any of the interlock devices on it. They'll have an e-stop, but that doesn't mean that it requires a pre-start. So the other thing is, if you had a pre-start on a piece of equipment, like let's take for instance the sander, and I'm talking about a large sander. If you had a sander and you moved it, so when changing location of an apparatus, structure, or process, a PSR would not be required if all of the following applied. So let's say you want to move it from one part of your plant to another part of your plant. So if all three of these items applied, then you would not need to do a pre-start. But if one of them applied, then you would need to do a pre-start. So they are the location changes within the same workplace. There are no modifications to the apparatus, structure, or process that would trigger a PSR under subsection 7.2, and there are no new or modified engineering controls or new or modified measures to deal with hazards introduced by changing the location. So if all three of those are good, you're just picking it up, moving it, reassembling it, not changing anything, then your original pre-start would stand. However, if you took a guard and let's say put an interlock guard on it, then you would need to do a pre-start. So that's machinery. The next item, so there's 8 of these items. The next item is material, articles, or things are placed or stored on a structure that is a rack or stacking structure. So this has to do with, in the woodworking industry, a lot of your selective pallet racks that you have, cantilevered racks that you have for storing wood, those sorts of things. I'll just go a little further here. For the purpose of item 3, rack lifting devices, typically lift trucks, are used to place loads onto them. These racks could be made of steel, wood, aluminum, or concrete structural members. These structures may be referred to as industrial pallet racks, stacker racks, drive-in and drive-through racks, cantilevered racks, pushback racks, or selective racks. So those are all of the ready rack style racking that we typically see in industry. The PSR requirement would be triggered when a new rack or stacking structure is to be installed in a factory, or an existing rack or stacking structure is to be modified. So a lot of those racks, when you get the pre-start done, are, the capacity of the rack can be determined by the distance between levels, the member sizes, and the components that are used. So if you change any of those, then you would need to get a new pre-start health and safety review done. So if you moved levels around, added levels to a rack, you would need to get another pre-start health and safety review done. If you changed the horizontal beam sizes in them, maybe you went to a bigger member or a smaller member, you'd have to get another pre-start health and safety review done. If you just picked up the rack and moved it in your facility, kept the same members, the same distances, apart, that sort of thing, then you wouldn't have to get another one done. But if you're changing them in the dimensions and adding levels and taking away levels and that sort of thing, then you would need to. And another important thing to note is a PSR for item 3 would not be required for the following: shelving units that are intended for low weight storage and that will be loaded by hand from the ground, such as shelving units for spare parts or small racks for storage that are purchased from a hardware store. And another one is component replacement or repair that does not alter the configuration of the rack or stacking structure, and the replacement repair component is identical to the original component. So if you have damage and you replace it like for like, then you wouldn't have to do another pre-start. So number 4 in the items that require pre-start health and safety review is a process that involves a risk of ignition or explosion that creates a condition of imminent hazard to a person's health or safety. This, in the woodworking industry, would be something like a spray booth. If you install a spray booth, that would trigger a pre-start health and safety review. We'd have to have the installation reviewed to ensure that it met applicable codes like the Fire Code, Ontario Fire Code, the Electrical Code, and also I think it's NFPA 33 for spray booths. Item number 5 is this is for the woodworking, is the use of a dust collector. Involves the risk of ignition or explosion that creates a condition of imminent hazard to a person's health or safety. So if you have a dust collector in your facility, outside of your facility, then you would need to get a pre-start health and safety review done on the dust collector for the same reasons as number 4, just to make sure that it meets those requirements of the fire code and NFPA. Number 6 really doesn't have to deal with the woodworking industry. It's a factory that produces aluminum or steel, or is a foundry that melts material and handles molten material. And number 7, this probably would. A lot of you probably have Gorbel crane systems in your facility, or jib cranes in your facility for handling product. It's any of the following are used. Number 1, traveling crane, overhead crane, monorail crane, gantry crane, jib crane, or other lifting device suspended from or supported by a structure. And number 2 is a vehicle lift or hoist. So if you have a Gorbel system in your facility, you need to do a pre-start health and safety review on it to ensure that it meets the applicable codes. And in this instance, it's the Gorbel crane itself, but it's also the structure that it's attached to, the trusses in the roof, that sort of thing. Is there an air handling unit above the Gorbel system that you're attaching this to? What's above it? Can it handle the snow load? Can it handle all the loads? Is there a lot of process piping? That sort of thing. So that one can get a little complicated if it's not placed in the correct spot in your building. Number 8, the final one, is a process uses or produces a hazardous biological or chemical agent that uses a ventilation system to limit the exposure of a worker in accordance with any exposure limit set out in Regulation 833 of the Revised Regulations of Ontario 1990, control of exposure to biological or chemical agents made under the Act. So I don't believe that one's very typical in the woodworking industry. So those are the 8 items that would trigger a pre-start. So, and this PDF is available at the end. I think Lori has it so that you can take it and take a look at it. Yep. Measures to achieve compliance. So if the PSR report includes recommended measures to achieve compliance with the applicable provisions, the employer must either undertake all recommended measures before the apparatus, structure, protective element, or process is operated or used, and provide written notice to the Joint Health and Safety Committee or Health and Safety Representative of how compliance with regulatory requirements will be achieved if some or all of the recommended measures in the PSR have not been completed. So your PSR is going to have measures required for compliance, and it's your requirement as the employer to complete those measures required for compliance. You do not have to hire the engineer to come back and re-review them. It's quite clear there is no requirement for the engineer to return and verify that the requirement compliances have been adequately mitigated. You just have to complete the measures required for compliance. I would recommend that you document them, keep them with the folder, and leave it at that in the event that you have a Ministry of Labor inspection. PSR exemptions. There are exemptions that you can do for some of these items, like for the racking. If when you go to buy racking, you can a lot of times the rack manufacturer will provide you with the capacity ratings for the racking. So I list it, it gets a little complicated, but I listed the website where you can find all the exemptions. In terms of the flammable liquids, there's exemptions as to how you can go about getting a PSR exemption, so that you make sure that I think the storage containers have less than 235 liters of flammable liquid. That sort of thing. So if again, this document will be available, and you can go to this section to see the exemptions. And in the end, we're just, when it comes to the guarding of the machinery, we're trying to follow the hierarchy of safeguarding, just not jump to training. So we're trying to redesign to eliminate the hazard. We do that by using fixture and closing guards. If we can't do that because you have to feed a part through, or then we look at movable and interlock guards, light curtains, interlock gates, safety mats, etc. And you see a lot of these on your machines, like your CNC machines, your single beam panel saws, rear loading panel saws, that sort of thing. You'll see all these devices for the areas that require frequent access. So you know that they've gone through some sort of risk reduction hierarchy from the manufacturer. And then, when you can't do any of that stuff, like in the event of a table saw, if you were to do a risk reduction hierarchy on a table saw, you then rely on jigs and fixtures and push ticks, that sort of thing. And then at the very bottom is protection information like training, signage, supervision. So that's it. I hope I didn't go through that too fast, but I would believe that's it. So if you have any questions, just let me know and we can talk about them.
The floor is open, so if you would like to ask any questions of Jason, please just unmute yourself and go ahead. Okay, well, as Jason mentioned, this is going to be available I have the PDF slideshow that we can have available. We are also videoed this, so it will be available on our hopefully YouTube channel.